With every season, a wave of new anime enter the fray to try and capture the spotlight over the course of a few months. Among those series this time around, one that I've been looking forward to see get animated has finally come to life in My Dress Up Darling, aka Sonobisuke Doll. Having read the manga prior to the anime debuting in January of 2022, it's a story that bears important messages that many people relate to and should take into account throughout their life journey, whether it be about themselves or those around them. And today I'll be talking about what this series taught me that makes it stick out so well, while also defeating the notion that the series is nothing more than fan service, which goes without saying is not true in the slightest. Okay, I can't lie to myself, it does come with the territory of its main topic, but anyway, yet behind it, it is a wonderful story about embracing your passions and learning to love yourself. The time is now to let you all know that My Dress Up Darling is more than meets the eye. Let's go. A few months ago, I was looking for a new series to get into and was in the midst of searching for a rom-com to help fill the eventual void in my heart for when Kaguya-sama comes to an end. And during my search, I came across a series called My Dress Up Darling by Shinichi Fukuda that was due to get an anime in 2022. The story is mainly centered around cosplay with elements of romance, comedy, and slice of life that bring it to life. Get it? Slice of life? Bring it to life? Yeah, that sounded a lot better in my head. Traumatized by a childhood incident with a friend who took exception of his love for traditional dolls, doll artisan hopeful Gojo Wakana passes his days as a loner, finding solace in the home ec room at his high school. To Wakana, people like beautiful Kitagawa Marin, a trendy girl who's always surrounded by a crowd of friends, is practically an alien from another world. But when cheerful Marin, never one to be shy, spots Wakana sewing away one day after school, she barges in with the aim of roping her classmate into her secret hobby: cosplay. Will Wakana's wounded heart be able to handle the invasion from this sexy alien? Yeah, that's the actual description of the series. Just talk to the people at AnyList, not me. Now, I should put this out there right away so I don't run into comments saying that I've spoiled the series. I will be discussing both the anime and the manga from My Dress Up Darling to help back up the importance behind the messages of the series. So I'll have a spoiler warning when I do dive into the content from the manga, so anime onlys can be sure to avoid that section of the video when possible. The first episode depicts the main character of the series, Wakana Gojo, a quiet, closed-off person whose passion of creating Hina dolls have earned him the scorn of a friend of his growing up, leading him to become secluded and reserved to the world later on in life. Wakana would have a tough time connecting with others due to that incident scarring him and taking away the social skills needed to deal with everyday life. It should be noted that he isn't a bad person at all. Misunderstood is the best way to describe him. He's someone who genuinely cares for others and is willing to put them before himself a majority of the time. However, one fatal flaw in Wakana's character that's spotted right from the jump is that he gets taken advantage of quite easily, thinking that he is useful to people, not understanding what it means to be relied upon and having a lack of awareness. Wakana is subjected to doing things that he lacks the confidence to back out of, in fear that he will continue to be a burden to those around him. That all begins to change as his world is turned upside down upon the fateful interaction with the heroine of the series, Marin Kitagawa, a upbeat gal who loves anime, manga, and video games without caring of what others think of her passions. This meeting would turn into the moment that would change Wakana's life forever. Before Wakana's eyes was a girl who lived in a completely different world to him. Marin has friends, hobbies, and is able to be happy with herself. She is accepted by those around her for what she loves without it being seen as a nuisance. Everything that Marin has is exactly what Wakana desires, yet the fear from being scorned along with self-doubt has caused him to never stand up for himself to be proud of who he is. Overhearing Marin's conversation with her friends, Wakana learns that Marin was hit on by a guy who ridiculed her for owning an anime keychain, which she then told off the guy before blowing him off. What is important from this scene is what Marin said in response to her friends about the incident. He already judged me before he opened his mouth. And besides, you just don't go making fun of things people clearly like. For something that felt like a burden to say for himself, Wakana hearing this from Marin will begin to open up the door he closed off since he was a kid. To see someone be proud of who they are and their interests, Wakana realized how far apart the worlds he and Marin lived in. However, the event that would truly tie Wakana and Marin together came when Marin witnessed Wakana fixing clothes after school. Thinking he would find peace and silence away from his classmates, Wakana is instead intruded by Marin, who immediately takes an interest in what our MC was doing. Having understood Wakana's talent for making clothes, Marin would then ask Wakana the very thing that would kickstart the beginning of their story story together, stripping down and putting on a dress to emulate the appearance of her beloved Shizuku-tan, only to be bombarded with criticism for her half-baked attempt. Marin pleads to Wakana to aid her in making cosplay clothes so she can become just like her favorite characters in fiction. Wakana was taken aback at this request because while he knew how to sew clothes to an extent, creating them was well out of his expertise. Yet despite that, Marin asking Wakana to help her was him finally understanding what it means to have someone rely on you out of pure genuine feelings, not out of using them for their own schemes. Marin saw something in Wakana that made her believe that if anyone was to aid her in her quest to cosplay, it would be none other than Wakana. Stealing his resolve, Wakana agrees to aid Marin, and thus their story together finally commences. I brought this up before in the previous videos. When it comes to first chapters, episodes of a series, My Dress Up Darling makes a great case of having one of the better ones in recent memory. When you look at this series from the outside, you would believe that it's filled with fan service and nothing more, and if you thought that, you couldn't be any more wrong. Well, it's there, and look, sometimes behind every great story, you need something to grab the reader's attention, okay? My Dress Up Darling in its early stages immediately defeats the notion of it being nothing more than a fan service series. It's a story that deals with themes that are relevant in our everyday life, learning new things that you had no experience of, along with meeting new people through them, being expressive of your hobbies, learning to love yourself, relying on others, and having others rely on you. They're all things that we go through in our everyday life and still tackle at this very moment. We all want to be accepted for who we are and not be ridiculed for that by our friends and family. Some have the fortune to live that type of life in the form of Marin, while others like Wakana are subjected to the things that I mentioned before about him that make his story so investing and rewarding throughout the series. Fukuda Sensei's handling of those components have brought out the very best of their writing to articulate the structure they have in place for how they want this story to be viewed and remembered for. Within all of that, which makes Darling so great comes down to one of the central themes that forms the main base of the series that holds everything together in cosplay. We as fans of multiple genres outside of just anime and manga should know what cosplay is, and yet even so, this series does a great job explaining how it works whether you're a novice or an expert. It's not just simply throwing on clothes together to transform into a character you're trying to play as. There is a lot more effort that goes into it, and why it's a profession over the past few decades that has seen it not only become just a hobby, but something you can make a living off of. Everything from the measurements down to the attention to detail give insights as to how cosplayers are able to create the outfits needed to become the character they're trying to portray as. An example of how good the knowledge and understanding of this is comes in episode 3 when Wakana explains to Marin the blueprint behind making the Shizuku cosplay. There's so much detail that went into creating the outfit that it goes to show the level of effort it will take to portray the character you're trying to become, and the closer you can get to the real thing, the better it will come off. Any slight alteration can be the difference from becoming the character you're cosplaying as or a failed attempt. It also helps that the anime has taken a few liberties to make Darling even better for those experiencing it for the first time, as well as for manga readers who are looking forward to seeing the story be animated. Whether it's down to keyframes and the way they're drawn to highlight how good the art can get, to scenes with tons of movements and fluidity that I didn't expect to see a lot of initially going into it, to even adding some anime only parts and removing some from the manga to keep things not just consistent but preventing distraction from the greater picture. These are among the many factors that have played a part in making each episode a joy to watch because of the level of effort Cloverworks and the staff at hand have put into this anime that has seen My Dress Up Darling come out the gate swinging for the fences and beyond. Its rise in popularity isn't just off word of mouth or fan art alone. The quality of the series speaks for itself, and it's only going to get better in due time. Now that's just me speaking on my perspective with the anime. With the manga, however, is where the real greatness is to be found. Shinichi Fukuda has done a brilliant job with My Dress Up Darling since starting this series in January of 2018. As his first major work as a mangaka, I have been thoroughly impressed with what he's done with Darling. All the factors that I brought up about my enjoyment of the anime stems from the vision foretold in the manga, including the arts and how great Fukuda's skills in that department have grown to the current day, how informative he's made not only cosplay but other areas that are connected to it come off really well in translation, such as photography and makeup, to his character writing down to the likes of Usami, who serves as a guide for both our main leads and the readers into understanding how cosplay works. The main reason, however, for my love for this series comes down to our main protagonists in Wakana and Marin. Experiencing their story up to the current events in the manga, these two have been nothing short of fun, engaging, and heartwarming, and especially their interactions with one another. They are like yin and yang, the other half of themselves that is missing, and you see that become more apparent over time, to where you can appreciate their growth as characters because of what they mean to one another. While Wakana's life has been the big focal part of the story, what we see in Marin's as the story progresses is what makes their connection hold more depth both on the surface and underneath it. Having lost her mother at an early age and her father being busy with work all the time, Marin has always been alone. While she has a group of friends that she can talk with to keep her mind away from her loneliness at home, that feeling will always still linger in the back of her head. Due to the time that they spent with each other over cosplay, that loneliness has begun to disappear from Marin just by being with Wakana, to the point where Marin would go to Wakana's house to have dinner with him and his grandfather Kato at times. And maybe some of that reason has to do with her diet and eating habits, but I'm gonna let Wakana be in charge of fixing all that. In a way, this has provided her with a family atmosphere that she's not accustomed to when they're own, showing that not only has she given Wakana a place in her world to feel safe by accepting him for who he is, the same is happening for Marin right now just by being with Wakana. And after the numerous cosplays that they worked on together, as well as the places they've gone to, it's become more apparent that Marin doesn't just view Wakana as a close friend, but someone that she's come to genuinely like and eventually love. Or in her case, love, with the W. The L, the W. Especially after the train scene coming off the Shizuku arc and what Wakana said about Marin looking pretty, something he never says unless he truly feels that way about something that is special to him. This would proceed to be what opens the lock on Marin's heart thanks to Wakana's innocence getting the better of him. And for Marin, trying to hold back becomes a challenge in and of itself, to which we see in the many events that come after, where they would be around each other more often, find themselves in situations that escalate the process for Marin in more ways than one. And through each new outfit is crafted, Marin's love for Wakana continues to grow deeper in the time they spent together. There are plenty of moments in the story that have made me appreciate Marin as a character. A lot of it has to do with how she's someone who doesn't judge others for what they like and is understanding of how they feel about the things that they're passionate about, as well as encouraging them to continue chasing their dreams as she does for herself. Just as when Wakana was talking about his dream of becoming a Hina doll maker and how he tried to downplay it as anything special, to which Marin tells him that if anyone is able to pull it off, it's Wakana. Since she's seen how much effort Wakana has put into everything he's done, as long as he continues to be himself, his dream will come true one day. She's basically the ultimate support that you would want by your side, and there's not many who can say that they do it better than her in that department. A scene that really speaks volumes to me of how much I adore Marin and her whole character arc is in chapter 39 in the manga. After the events of the fireworks festival and with summer coming to an end, Wakana and Marin spend some time together at the latter's house watching a scary movie. After Wakana leaves and Marin becomes terrified to sleep alone, she calls Wakana to keep her company until she falls asleep. They talk about many things, including what they did during the summer. As Wakana is about to fall asleep, he says that this year was fun before dozing off, to which Marin is in agreement of. It's at this moment that the memories of the time they spent together start flowing through Marin's mind before saying the words to convey how much Wakana means to her. In her inner monologue since the train incident, she's constantly saying to herself how much she loves Wakana, but never is able to say it out loud, whether it's due to not wanting her feelings to get in the way or the timing being off. Yet that all changes in this very moment as a long silence on the phone commences as Wakana drifts off to sleep. Gojo-kun, I love you. There's no more hiding it, no more questioning herself. Marin has fallen in love with Wakana. She realizes how important Wakana has been for her since they first met, and the journey that they've been on together, the memories that she shared with them, and how she was able to pursue her dream of cosplaying thanks to having Wakana in her life. But most of all, Marin has found herself at home with Wakana. What was once a world that looked bright on the outside but filled with void on the inside, the presence of Wakana being there as her ray of sunshine gives her the very thing that every human desires, the feeling of being loved. And knowing Marin has Wakana by her side, no matter what challenges await her or when life gets tough, she will always know that the person she cherishes will be there for her just as she's been there for him. By the time we've reached the end of the first 2 volumes of this series, or in the case of the anime with the first 6 episodes having aired, we know that Marin has started to come to take a liking to Wakana as more than a friend, and rightfully so. What is there not to like about a guy who's willing to give his all to someone that they care about, treats her with the utmost respect, and is slowly becoming a master at crafting killer cosplay fits as time passes? Yet even so, it's not so simple just to throw the two together, make them a couple, and they all live happily ever after. While it may feel one-sided at times for Marin, there is good reason for that. There is still plenty of groundwork needed to get Wakana to be at the same stage Marin is at when it comes to love. If you are unable to love yourself, how are you supposed to do that for others? The goal for Wakana is to become a person who is proud of what he does without being in constant fear of what others think of him. That incident as a kid left a traumatizing effect with them, and for most people, it's difficult to overcome if the scars run that deep. And when he is able to stand proud and love himself for who he is, he can eventually do the same for Marin, but that process will require a lot of work and time to get him to become the person he desires to be. the best version of himself. However, after the recent events in the manga, specifically in chapters 60 through 62, is when those feelings start to come to fruition. Preparing for the cultural festival with Marin's cosplay of being a male idol for a pageant, Wakana starts to become overwhelmed by everything that's happening. His classmates have come to watch Wakana apply the finishing touches to create Marin's cosplay, and his nerves start to kick in, having to perform this task in front of the watchful eyes of his peers. Overwhelmed by the prospect of failing in front of them and letting Marin down, Wakana begins to fall back into despair, but when Marin is there to comfort him, Wakana's demeanor completely changes. All this time, he's been told by others that he is the best at what he does, but not once has he himself considered wanting to be the best for his own sake. Having seen how much Marin is willing to put into becoming #1, the same goes for Wakana, and the drive that takes over Wakana leads him to find the resolve needed to perform the task at hand, aiding Marin in her goal to become #1. Not just for her sake, but for Wakana's as well. Which then leads to the moment that I feel is one of the series' most important and beautifully written scenes to date. As Marin takes the stage and the crowd comes to adore her cosplay, something inside of Wakana begins to remind him of the feelings he had when he saw a Hina doll for the first time. Recognizing the beauty when staring at the creation that lay before his eyes, it was at this moment that Wakana had begun to realize that just like what happened in the past with the Hina doll and admiring the beauty before him, he had come to fall in love with Marin. As subtle of a move this was from Fukuda sensei, the way this scene is conveyed using the info of what we knew prior was to show how much Wakana has grown as a person. The Wakana at the beginning of the story would never have felt this way about someone because of the insecurities he had about himself. But after meeting Marin, her accepting him for who he is, the bond that they shared over time, and now applying his feelings with the word he only used for things he deemed as special to him, there is no other way to describe this moment other than I heart Wakana Gojo and Marin Kitagawa greatness. Wakana and Marin have already solidified themselves among my favorite couples and duos in anime and manga by the recent events in the story. Even if they've yet to confirm their love for one another directly, the steps towards reaching that stage aren't too far away now, and you can't help but appreciate how much one means for the other. Wakana would never be able to do the things like interact with people and make friends, go to places that were outside his comfort zone, and come to understand those who deal with circumstances that share traits of similarity to his own had he never met Marin. In the case for Marin, her dream of getting into cosplay and dressing up as her favorite characters would never have bore fruit had she not met Wakana. She had the drive and the passion to pursue the dream, but the understanding of the process was outside of her forte. Wakana being the person to help her reach her goals was the helping hand she needed all along. It was almost as if fate itself allowed these two to meet and be united together in their own quest to chase their dreams while also supporting each other along the way. The more I find myself writing about My Dress Up Darling, the more I want to talk about the series even further in depth, and that's credit to how good of an author Shinichi Fukuda has proven himself over the past few years while writing this series. If you're someone who loves cosplay regardless of how long you've been doing it, or you just appreciate the art of people dressing up as the characters you're attached to, I highly encourage you to give this series a shot. While I've yet to experience any other story that is focused primarily on cosplay, I can say that it does a fantastic job illustrating the inner works of how it all comes together, whether it be making the clothes, the makeup, the photography, among many elements. I've learned quite a lot from the time I've spent with My Dress Up Darling, and can safely say that it is a series that's more than meets the eye. It's a story about what it means to share your passions and being expressive of them, learning to love yourself, understanding what it means to rely on others, and them doing the same for you, and most importantly, appreciating the bond you share with someone who has similar interests as you. Those people might seem easy to find, but being able to keep them, have your disagreements with them, and still cherish them for who they are as they would with you are what establish the bond you have with that special person in your life. Whether they are your friend, family member, comrade in arms, or a gal who loves to cosplay your favorite characters in fiction that eventually becomes your lover one day. Let me know what your thoughts are about My Dress Up Darling down in the comments. If you are an anime only watcher, what do you think of this series, and will you be picking up the manga after the first season ends? Manga readers, how do you feel about the anime adaptation so far? Has anything I talked about regarding the manga resonate with you on the same level? And if there is anything you would like to add in that I might have missed out on, feel free to do so. Like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel if you guys are new here. If you want to see more content like this from me in the near future, definitely subscribe if you haven't already. Click on the bell Shandora to stay up to date with everything that goes on the channel. And with that being said, I will catch you guys in the next video. Commodore last signing off. Thank you so much for watching. As always, take care.